Good morning. Good morning. It's lovely to be here in Tuscaloosa with your warm hospitality and all of the wonderful things going on today. So thank you for being here for our Christmas Eve service. Welcome to this church here in Tuscaloosa, which is partnered to our church in Birmingham and all of our folks who are watching online. We're so glad you're here. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. This morning, the Parker space probe flew closer to the sun than humanity has ever been, reminding us that we are always in search of the star. With that, to all who are here this morning, Merry Christmas and welcome home. Thank you, Ron. Ron can give a dissertation about it later. I've said the extent of my knowledge. You may remain seated for the lighting of the chalice, but these are the words. Calling all who cannot wait any longer for joy, for hope, and for some good news, even a little. The time has come, the waiting is over. Here in this time, we have an old story to tell, one that has been shared over and over for thousands of years, but still, it is a lot of time. And still, somehow, it remains unheard, still radical and risky, breaking through into these days of darkness and cold, division and fear, interrupting the perpetual stories of violence and loss and the feelings of powerlessness. Into the errands and errors of our everyday, Christmas arrives not only to comfort, but to awaken, to reassure, and to also stir us up as a new life, a life of peace, a life of justice, a life of courageous love struggles to be born, wondering if we will yet be the ones who make room in our lives and in our world for the refugee, the poor, the plain, and the messy sweetness of a newborn baby. If we will take the journey to Bethlehem, if we will be changed by the presence of a love that meets us where we are, in the fields, wherever we lay, and calls us forth into a new journey, a braver and bolder life, believing that it is not too late for strong and gentle people to win, for compassion and truth to have the final say, for the bright light of hope to shine through even on the darkest night. Come, let us celebrate the good news of Christmas, and let us worship together today. Let us begin by singing together hymn number 253, O Come, All Ye Faithful. The words are in your order of service. Please stand together as you are willing and able. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went down from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place in the guest room. Now, in that same region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those whom he favors." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. And when they saw this, they made it known what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had told them. And Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, just as it had been told them. And when the 8th day came, it was time to circumcise the child, and he was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Our second reading, just for context, is a reminder that we are in a Unitarian Universalist church this morning. And so I am reading from the apocryphal, non-canonical, heretical Infancy Gospel of James, chapters 17 and 18. Now, and just for clarification for those of you new, I wrote my master's thesis on the non-canonical early Christian literature. So this is a personal passion that I'm getting to share this with you today. So, according to the Infancy Gospel of James, "Now there went out a decree from Augustus the king, that all that were in Bethlehem of Judea should be recorded. And Joseph said, 'I will record my sons, but this child, what shall I do with her?'" He's talking about Mary, who he did not want to marry because of her age, according to the Infancy Gospel of James. "How shall I record her? As my wife? Nay, I am ashamed. Or as my daughter? But all the children of Israel know she is not my daughter. This day of the Lord shall do as the Lord willeth." And he saddled the female donkey, and he set her upon it, and his son led it, and Joseph followed after. And they drew near unto Bethlehem within 3 miles, and Joseph turned himself about, and saw her with a sad countenance, and said to himself, "What pains her?" And again Joseph turned himself about, and saw her laughing, and said to her, "Mary, what aileth thee, that I see thy face at one time laughing, and at another time sad?" And Mary said unto Joseph, "It is because I hold 2 people with mine eyes, the one weeping and lamenting, and the other rejoicing and exulting." Those of us who have been pregnant can probably understand that sentiment, right? And they came to the midst of the way, and Mary said to him, "Take me down off this donkey, for that which is within me presseth me to come forth." And he took her down from the donkey, and said unto her, "Whither shall I take thee to hide thy shame? For the place is desert." And he found a cave there, and he brought her into it, and he set his sons by her. And he went forth and sought for a midwife of the Hebrews in the country of Bethlehem. Thus endeth the Christmas Eve readings. With those in mind, let us join together and sing "Within the Shining of the Star." And Ken, let's do this one twice around since it's only 2 verses. Within the shining of the star, we catch a glimpse of who we are. In every infant born we see the hope of our nativity. The miracle of each new birth can shake and save the stony earth. Triumphantly the newborn's cry strikes echoes from the waiting sky. That is one of our Unitarian Universalist hymns. So, would the children like to come forward as I tell the story, or do you want to stay where you are and color? It's up to you. I'd just like to see you. Do you want to come up here? Come up here. Come here. Yes. Y'all just want to have a seat? We have so many friends here today. I'm so excited to see all of you. So today's story is from 1923. That's a long time ago, right? And it was written by a Unitarian minister named Reverend Samuel Crothers. And it's a Christmas parable, okay? So, once there was a king who always had his own way. Do you all have your own way all the time? Some are shaking their heads, yes, parents, just letting you know. So he always had his way because he was the king. He always had people who looked up to him, and so he had formed the bad habit of looking down on those people. That's not very nice, is it? Yeah, so he had a great contempt for common people and common things, which meant he was not very nice. He was not very nice to regular people, right? On Christmas Eve, the people, young and old, wanted to come to the palace to sing a song of peace on earth, goodwill to humanity. But they were very common people, just like us, who made their living by digging in the earth and caring for the things that grew out of it. What would we call those people that dig in the earth? Yeah, the farmers. "The song is all right," said the king, "but I don't want these people to sing it. They are not my kind of people, and there are too many of them anyway. But I should dearly like to hear the angels sing up there in the sky. I have a taste for things spiritual. I should dearly love to see the harps of gold." So on Christmas Eve, he told all the people they could not come to the palace because he did not want people like that singing the songs. And the crier, the guy who makes all the announcements in town, said that the king should not be disturbed for any reason. And so the king and the young prince would sit up on the holy night to hear the angels sing. The king was very religious, and as he was used to being obeyed, he had no doubt that angels would come sing for him when they learned that this was his royal pleasure. He was anxious that his young son should be with him to enjoy the miracle. They waited, and no angels came. "Now that is strange," said the king, who was accustomed to promptitude. "Where are these angels?" And he went to the window and saw a star. "Who are you?" asked the king. "I am the star which guided the wise men to the place where the young child lay." "Is that all?" said the king. "Stars are common. I have seen thousands of them and have not enough interest in them to even ask their names. There are so many of them. They are like the dust which rises from my chariot wheels. One can see a star on any night." So the star faded away, and the king saw it no more. But the young prince went out and stood under the sky filled with stars. There were thousands of them, and each one of them was wonderful. And to think that they had been shining there before he was born, before any of us were born. When he came back, his eyes were glowing. "Father, you should go out and look at the stars, how they shine." "I have seen them before," said the king. As they looked out from the palace, they saw the shadowy forms of 3 ungainly beasts. Their steps were noiseless, and they moved slowly as if they come from a great distance, and one of them was lame. "Who are you?" said the king gruffly. "We are the camels which the wise men rode when they followed the star to the place where the young child lay. We have crossed wide deserts, and we are hungry and thirsty and tired." "What is that to me?" said the king. "My son and I are waiting to hear the angels sing. We have never seen an angel or heard one, but we can see camels any day. Begone to your deserts, you ugly brutes." Is he nice to the camels? Gosh, this guy is just not nice. Not being nice at all. So the young prince slipped out in the dark, and he gave the camels food and drink. "Angels," he said, "can take care of themselves, but camels must be fed." So how is the young prince? Is the young prince nice? Yeah, he fed the camels, right? Then in the darkness appeared other creatures, moving forms. "Who are you?" said the king, "that you come to disturb my royal meditation?" "We are the oxen who stood by the manger in which the Christ child was laid." And other voices added, "We are the sheep that were in the fields of Bethlehem." "Camels and oxen and sheep," said the king. "Why should I be troubled with these earthly things on the night that I want to feel religious?" And then there came from the king's park 3 poor men in rough clothing, leaning heavily on their staffs. "Who are you?" said the king. "We are the poor shepherds of Bethlehem who watched over our sheep on the night when we heard a multitude of the heavenly host singing, 'Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward humans.'" You heard it? A multitude of the heavenly host singing to people like you? "You come to mock me." And he drove them away. He said, "Go away." His young son said not a word, but softly walked after them, for he wanted to talk with the friendly shepherds and hear their tale. And still the angels were not there. At last, a young boy came unannounced. "Who are you?" growled the king. "I am the Christ child." "I did not recognize you," said the king. "I thought you would be different. You look as much like the children I have known." "Did you know them?" said the Christ child. If you had really known them, you would have known me. And that is the end of our story. Just like each of you. Yes. Each night a child is born is a holy night. Each night that each of you were born is a holy night. Your parents think so. I'm pretty certain. And your grandparents and all the adults who love you. All right, friends, you can go back to your seats. Great job. Let us sing together, Sing We Now of Christmas. Please feel free to stand in body or in spirit.
All five verses? Oh, I do. I have it. Three verses.
I forgot that was the time to do the offertory. Would you be willing to play something while we do that? So traditionally, on Christmas Eve, the offering that is collected today goes to the minister's discretionary fund, which is the fund I use to help members and friends when they are going through a rough time. It's been used to pay utility bills, to pay for medical equipment, to help folks in need as they as is needed. So I invite you now to think about how much you'd like to contribute to that fund, and if I could get a couple volunteers ush the offering because I forgot to do that, I would appreciate that. You can write it to the church, and yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your generosity in caring for those less fortunate than we are, and may our gifts multiply and care for our community. Please join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation, followed by a moment of silence. The story tells of a woman heavy with child, traveling with her partner to be counted in a census declared by a distant ruler, unaware of the lives disrupted or the life that is to come. May those in power open their minds and hearts to the impact of their actions on others, especially those who are unseen and unprotected. The story tells of too many people and not enough housing, so that the couple shelters in a stable with the animals. May we know that there can be enough housing for all, housing that offers comfort and warmth and home. The story tells of a baby born on a cold night, the birthing cries unrecorded, perhaps unheard, a child swaddled, loved and warmed by his parents and the animals in the stable. May the cries of all mothers be heard, and may all children born into this world be welcomed, warmed, and loved. The story tells of a star bright in the night sky, heralding a message of new life, pointing the way to light toward hope. May we have glimpses of the stars on these long, dark nights, and may we see in the starlight a message of life, of light, and of hope. Let us take a moment of silence together. May it be so. Blessings to you this holiday season. Let us join together in singing another of our Unitarian hymns. We're going to sing all verses of It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. Our reading this morning is from the Reverend Dan Schatz. He writes a new Christmas poem. He's one of my colleagues, and he writes a new Christmas poem every year. And nearly every year, it's exactly the poem that needs to go with my sermon. So it's quite synchronous. It was quiet enough in the alley behind the barn, warm against piles of hay, despite the winter chill. I heard the sharpness in her breathing. It's coming. And I held her against the cold, against the pain, against it all. It's coming. They were hard, those first hours we all spent together, coming after so long a journey. Later, poets would tell of stars, shepherds, and seers, songs of angels. But all that I remember at the end of that longest night is the cry of my heart as in my arms I held perfect love. Yeah, those are good. I like them. Thank you, Dan. We as Unitarian Universalists honor that each night a child is born is a holy night. And even in 2024, it is still a miracle when a child is born and a mother survives the birth. But there has never been a birth more studied, more revered, and more exaggerated than the birth of the Jewish boy born in what is now the West Bank over 2,000 years ago. All over Tuscaloosa today, pastors are focusing on one element of the story to lift up for your reflection today. What stands out to me in the story this year are those preliminary verses when it comes to the birth of Jesus. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. Those are some powerful words this year, remembering the setting in which Jesus was born. Roman records, despite being copious, have no record of a census at this time. And Romans loved keeping track of things, and they loved census because that was a way to tax people. And so if this is not a historical record, why do Luke and Matthew go to such lengths to tell us about the census? From a religious standpoint, they needed to explain why they thought Jesus was born in Bethlehem, so that the ancient prophecies would be fulfilled. Joseph's role in the story is to cement that Jesus came from the line of David and was therefore a legitimate king of the Jews. But there was also political motivation here. The census symbolized Augustus's sovereignty over the civilized world, what they thought was the civilized world, and a reminder of Rome's power over Judea. Jesus' birth and other accounts really upsets King Herod the Great, Rome's puppet king. Herod, who was worried about his power, who was a little paranoid already, heard the unrest from his subjects, who wished for him and his parent company, the Romans, to be disposed. To emphasize Herod's fear and concern, Matthew recounts the massacre of the innocents, another unlikely historical event, but one written into the account to give veracity to the prophecies. Herod profited greatly from his relationship to Rome, but that isn't the only reason his Jewish subjects hated him. Herod was Jewish, and he had married a Jewish princess to secure his throne, only after divorcing his first wife when he learned she was not politically advantageous to him. Herod was also admired by many of his Jewish subjects because he spent a lot of money remodeling the Jewish temple. He spent a lot of money and effort. And he made the first coins without graven images, which is one of the commandments that Jews follow. And he also built pagan temples in the other lands he governed. So his religiosity was a little bit hypocritical. Herod owned vast private estates, and he was continually given more land to rule by Rome because he was such a loyal puppet king to the Romans. Herod is definitely the bad guy in this story. But in many ways, Herod was a very successful statesman, except by those who found his policies hypocritical, focused on accumulating wealth instead of care for the people, and lavish in luxury while his people suffered. In the year 4 before the Common Era, when most historians believe Jesus was actually born, Herod was dying. And his pain and misery were being passed down in cruelty to his subjects. Historians believe he may have had a paranoid personality disorder. He was terrified of being overthrown. And he had his second wife, her mother, a daughter, 2 sons, and a cousin, many others executed because of his delusions. Everyone was afraid of him. The society in which Jesus was born was a pre-modern domination system. It was politically oppressive, where the top 1 to 2% ruled the land, and ordinary people had no voice. It was economically exploitative. Half to 2/3 of the wealth generated was sent to the hands of the powerful. It was religiously legitimated, with religious leaders explaining that this is how the system was because God wanted it this way, while also those religious leaders benefiting from that system themselves. And it was marked by armed conflict because wealth needed to be protected, and armies provided another vehicle of these powerful folks to increase their wealth. It is into this context that Jesus is born. Jesus was born to Herod's subjects, who were oppressed and marginalized by the empire of the day. His birth took place during a time of militant messianism, where the oppressed Jewish folks wanted deliverance from their oppressors at any cost. Rome had absolute power over their lives. And in Jesus' later teachings, although he was rebellious against the culture of the time, he was strategically against the religious structure, not the political structure. An example of this, Jesus overturned the tables in the temple because of the hypocrisy and exploitation of the poor happening in the temple. And Jesus is quoted in saying in Matthew 22 as saying, "Pay Caesar what is due to Caesar." Jesus taught the importance of paying one's taxes, a lesson that certain politicians and oligarchs would do well to follow today. Jesus' teachings stand out because we are taught as if they come out of a vacuum, as if Jesus received some special revelation that no one else has ever received. But that's not entirely true if we look at the biblical texts in front of us. If we look at the stories around Jesus' birth, which focus on Joseph and Mary, we find 2 people who are committed to their spirituality and their hope of a deliverer. Those of us from the Protestant tradition frequently skip over the verses called Mary's Magnificat as insignificant to the story. We don't give Mary nearly enough credit. But she sings in this story when she learns that she's going to be pregnant. The mighty one has brought down the powerful from their thrones and has lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. Mary's song illustrates that Jesus was not born to a docile woman who kept her place, but rather by a woman whose prophetic voice called for and hoped for collective liberation. In the infancy gospel of James, which I read from earlier, which is a non-canonical early Christian text, Joseph describes the moment of Jesus' birth as a time when the earth literally stood still for a moment. Joseph describes watching those around him as he searched for a midwife and noticed that no one else was moving, frozen in time, midway through whatever they were doing. And then suddenly, everything went back to normal. Joseph was incredibly obedient to the religious leaders of his time, and if you read the whole infancy gospel of James, you will see how obedient he was in not wanting to take Mary for his wife. So he took Mary for his wife, but he decided to treat her as another child because she was so much younger than him, and he felt it was so inappropriate to be her husband. These other early Christian texts, although they are not canonical, can give us great insight into what was happening at that time. Context, time, and place matters so much to this story that we talk about. Historically, we know that Jesus was not born in isolation, but in the milieu of his parents' hope for the future and his community's need for salvation from oppressive rulers who treated them as less than. Like every other baby, Jesus was surrounded by family at birth. Likely Joseph's extended family, and women would have been next to Mary to hold her hand and guide her through the process. When we take this story out of context and focus only on the incredible teacher who was born, we erase those who lifted up his story by connecting his birth to the interdependent web of existence, who told his mama how her son made a difference, by giving his followers a touchstone, a memory, a reminder of his greatness in their lives. The story I shared earlier during the Time for All Ages was a parable, as I mentioned, written in 1923. And Reverend Crothers, who wrote the story, taught through this story that sometimes kings can be distracted by shiny objects and billowing angels, and they miss the message of the Christ child himself, whose love and generosity is found in ordinary animals and humans. We can be reminders to those in power of what the message truly is. The baby we remember today was a child born into empire. He fought against the empire, not in the ways his people would have hoped, but through teaching love for one another, generosity to all beings, and interrupting the systemic oppression of others case by case, lesson by lesson. For years, his teachings remained local to where he lived and traveled, but soon his lessons were passed on to authorities, and we know how that story ends. So as today we honor his birth and remember his legacy, may we remember in the new year that resistance doesn't start at the top, but in the shadows, through care and community support, training our eyes to look for opportunities to help others. Resistance needs something to resist against. And when we focus our eyes at the top, We lose context for what we can make better in the here and now and within our own capacity. Luke Skywalker's epic journey would have been so different had he not first rescued R2-D2 from that abusive owner. Remember? Yes. Dumbledore's army would have been less successful if they hadn't trained in secret for months. The Avengers never could have defeated Thanos until they learned to work together. Jesus defeated Herod as a baby. Jesus was the original boy who lived. Jesus' story is the hero's journey. Built on the hopes of his people, he spent time learning about those oppressions. He gathered a team and he taught them how to change the world. And he taught till the very end how love conquers all, even death. Rebellions are built on hope. Let us hold fast to hope and remember the hope nurtured this night so long ago. Amen. Thank you. Let us join together and sing Silent Night. It's in here or in the hymnal in 251.
Gonna do the candle lighting?
Do we have candles?
I don't know. We're not doing the candle lighting, okay.
hearts to the beauty of music. Today we have dared to hear a message of hope spoken once again against the challenge of the world. It is time to now depart, to go forward to our lives, to the world. May joy be your companion, whether you are with others or alone. May love be your strength, and may the gift of community dwell in your heart. For here in this place you are welcome always, whenever you choose, whenever you need. Amen.